Talk shoes.
Recorded live.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Tilsner, and this is as much an episode of Zeitgeist Philadelphia Radio as it also is, how do I put this, a extra credit assignment for week 3 of one of the Coursera classes I'm doing, which is called How to Change the World. And week 3 is specifically all about climate change and sustainability. So I thought, what better to do for an extra credit assignment than something I've kind of been looking to do anyway, which is tackle the subject of climate change. However, it's not much to tackle anymore. It's been really kind of synchronistic that we've also shown up on Twitter, all sorts of different things this week I've found in just simply looking through the trend of climate change on Twitter. It was a very surprising thing to learn from this week, how much new information had come out. However, this show is also going to take a look at some of, or at least discuss, I'll be bringing up much of the information that was discussed in one of my other classes by Professor Jeffrey Sachs, The Age of Sustainable Development. So some of the things I bring up will be from his class predominantly. He also currently works at the UN's Sustainable Development Solutions Network, which can be found at unsdsn.org. They have a climate change letter, which everyone can sign. Essentially, it's going out to all of the world leaders in September. So please sign that if you are one of those people who believes that those sorts of petitions are appreciated and respected. Please take the time and effort to sign the climate letter at unsdsn.org/climate letter. Thank you. Further, I would like to pretty much, after mentioning all that, because Professor Jeffrey Sachs, I do actually feel like I owe a lot to, because now I actually have a lot more information, not just on this subject, but many others that have to do with sustainability and where we're actually at in today's society. As much as the Zeitgeist movement looks forward, looking at actually where we are today is sometimes very helpful in getting a good idea of how we can then move forward. But I think I want to take a jump in the Wayback Machine here and bring up what was the first scientifically recognized greenhouse letter or greenhouse study. Was published in 1896 by a Swedish scientist named Augustus Arrhenius, who received the Nobel Prize for Chemistry in 1903 and 05. The Arrhenius labs are at Stockholm University, are named after him as well. Arrhenius was the first person to predict that emissions of carbon dioxide from fossil fuel and combustion processes were great enough to alter the climate. His calculation stated if the quantity of carbonic acid, or CO2, increases in geometric progression, the augmentation of the temperature will increase nearly in arithmetic progression. That said, there is also a group called the Genetic Literacy Project.org. They also recently put out, I'm trying to bring it up here, a report by Dan Ryder, and he pretty much has a list here of a few different things from a few different scientific consensus around the world over the last few decades, essentially. We started, like I said, over 100 years ago. Now we have about 13 years ago, in 2001, the International Science Academy's joint statement. Climate change is real. There is now strong evidence that significant global warming is occurring. The evidence comes from direct measurements of rising surface air temperatures and subsurface ocean temperatures, and from phenomena such as increases in average global sea levels, retreating glaciers, and changes to many physical and biological systems. It is likely that most of the warming in recent decades can be attributed to human activities. Once again, that was the Science of Climate Change in 2001 from the International Science Academy's joint statement. We then go to 2005, the National Academies of Science in the USA. Understanding and responding to climate change in 2005. The scientific understanding of climate change is now scientifically clear to justify taking steps to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. 2006, the American Association for the Advancement of Science says, the scientific evidence is clear. Global climate change caused by human activities is occurring now, and it is a growing threat to society. Then in 2008, we have the World Health Organization suggesting there is now widespread agreement that the Earth is warming due to emissions of greenhouse gases caused by human activity. It is also clear that current trends in energy use, development, and population growth will lead to continuing and more severe climate change. From the report Protecting Health from Climate Change in 2008. In 2010, we have the Royal Society of UK. There is strong evidence that the warming of the Earth over the last half century has been caused largely by human activities, such as the burning of fossil fuels and changes in land use, including agriculture and deforestation. The Climate Change, a Summary of the Science, 2010. In 2012, the European Commission said there is unequivocal evidence that the Earth's climate is warming. The consensus among climate experts is that it is extremely likely that the main cause of recent warming is the greenhouse gases emitted by human activities, in particular the burning of fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas, and the destruction of the forests. Climate Change Fact Sheet 2012. In 2013, the American Medical Association said the AMA supports findings of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's fourth assessment report and concurs with the scientific consensus that the Earth is undergoing adverse global climate change and the anthropogenic contributions are significant. Global Climate Change and Human Health, 2013. Let's see. Excuse me. Professor Sachs has also basically suggested during the 6th week of his class, we are now at the end of our planetary boundaries, and the 6th great extinction wave is occurring. Huge losses of biodiversity is pretty much what that means, and it's not natural. It's coming from us. Because of this, some scientists now say we are in a new geological age called the Anthropocene, and suggests further that the greatest threats to planetary boundaries are from industrial technology, agriculture, and animal husbandry. Yeah, sorry, it's basically suggesting that even if you are not down with the vegan diet, there is a sustainability issue when it comes to meat and the generation thereof. I'll go into that a little bit later. We need to bring, Sachs goes on to say, we need to bring our economic systems into planetary boundaries. And then he goes on and cites some of the major issues we now face, such as extreme heat waves, greater powered hurricanes, and low-land flooding, such as the cities of London, Shanghai, and New York. There are also other studies out there that suggest Miami and New Orleans have some issues here as well. He further points out that monetary economies is best on the coasts in these coastal cities, and yet these are also the ones that are the most threatened. As I'd mentioned earlier this week, there's a lot of stuff I'd found on Twitter in researching all of this. NASA recently released a time-lapse photo of the nitrogen oxide, which is one of 6 federally regulated pollutants. The pictures range from 2005 to 2011 over the United States. These pictures are obviously not something I can show you in a radio program. However, they can obviously be looked up at NASA. It's nasa.gov/content/goddard/new-nasa-highlight-us-air-quality-improvement. The impact of the technology to reduce emissions of nitrogen dioxide and sulfur dioxide from coal-fired power plants is apparent in satellite imagery, which shows the signal of pollution blink out over time. Still, while air quality is improving, power plant emissions of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas remain an issue, was one of the quotes that's put on there. On the pictures, and they were very different. So it does prove that we can alter things and make things better. At where I'd originally found this was at the Singularity Hub, and then I went on to actually find the information directly from NASA. But I really like the Singularity Hub's quote where they spoke about these pictures, and it's that's not to say that the air is now pristine. Earth's atmosphere is complex and global, whereas pollution is falling in industrialized countries. The opposite is true in developing nations like China and India, and no region is a closed system. That is changing levels in one will affect the other. Changing levels in one area will affect the other area. But it's a hopeful sign that a central driver has been the invention of technology for cleaner and more efficient energy in use in cars and power plants. Technology tends to improve and get cheaper over the years, and once available, it crosses national and ideological divides with relative ease. If it works, it works. I definitely agree with that wholeheartedly. And again, the idea that we can fix a lot of these problems by essentially ending the use of certain things is also provable. Back in the 90s, seas were discovered to have made a hole in the ozone layer through recognition of the problem and then taking the steps, both legal and technical, to improve conditions of the ozone layer. It has begun a process of healing. It's obviously not there yet, and other contributions are still, unfortunately, there are still countries that still contribute to the problem. However, it has been so drastically decreased that it has also been noticeable. However, it takes about 7.8 billion tons of carbon to be put into the put into the atmosphere. That causes a +1 in the part per million. So in 2010, we produced around 14 billion tons, which then added almost 2 parts per million. And then in 2013, we hit a CO2 concentration of 400 parts per million total. So that's part of the reason why there are many people have been kind of really like, hey, it's maybe about time that we really need to do something about it. I'll get into what 350.org has helped with towards the end of this. Farming is, Sachs also goes on to suggest that farming is the greatest anthropogenic issue: transportation of food, methane from cattle, industrial processing of nitrogen for agriculture fertilizer, which then run off and collects in estuaries, creating further ecological destruction through algae blooms. Bacteria then eat the dying algae, and the bacteria creates a hypoxia, which is basically an oxygen depletion, which ends up killing the fish. So we're not really doing a lot to help that process when it comes to this whole idea of sustainability really needs to take hold, or else you can see where there's going to be a lot of different problems that hit like a lot of different facets of not just our economy, but also ecology. And when these two things collide, it's going to have obviously problems with food production. Further, with issues of water, we use about 70% for food, and the creation of our food. About 20% of it goes to industry, and then only about 10% of it goes to people and residential and so on, showers, drinking water, so on. Switch again. Greenland has been noticed to have as much as a decrease of 140 centimeters in some of the southern tip areas, was shown in the climate.nasa.gov/key_indicators/sea level. That's really surprising to see some of the things change from only 2003 to 2011. You can actually change the indicator if you go to that site and take a look at that time change. You also see some satellite data and ground data of differences in changes of water levels. They are also, the satellite data shows as much as a rate of change of 3.7 millimeters per year since 1993 to present. So that's 20 years of changing. That's over 60 centimeters change, probably 70, over 70 centimeters change, if I'm doing the math right. I apologize very, very quickly there, but that's still in that neighborhood. Yeah, that's rather significant. It's only going to get more significant as if we do not make changes necessary. And deforestation is also a large contributor. Forests, which sequester carbon and produce oxygen, are sadly clear-cut for cattle grazing, destroying biodiversity. Even the Philadelphia Zoo tells a grim story for their orangutan exhibit, talking about the causing of expansion of the plantation of palm oil and how it is destroying their habitats. These are definitely some things that, like, they can't do anything about. It's clearly us that's causing these problems. Sachs again, greenhouse gases trap infrared radiation. They help develop life. But if we throw them out of balance, they begin to warm the planet and make the ocean acidic, raising the pH balance from carbonic acid, which also harms coral and many shellfish, messing with how they produce their shells, including phytoplankton, which produce half the world's oxygen. Let that sink in for a moment as you consider SpongeBob's boss, Mr. Krabs, is always valuing money, first off, over just about everything else, and then also consistently trying to thwart plankton. I personally find the synchronicity of the metaphor both ironic and disturbing. However, again, the idea that we can all come together across a lot of different divides on this simple issue is becoming very apparent. Even The Atlantic has reported that the Pope himself has been quoted saying, "When I look at so many forests all cut that have become land that can no longer give life," he reflected, citing South American forests in particular, "This is our sin, exploiting the earth. This is one of the greatest challenges of our time, to convert ourselves to a type of development that knows how to respect creation." I find that to be really an amazing step in the right direction, that the leader of basically a billion people's spirituality has just suggested that we take that direction. I am really happy to hear those words. Further, 350.org has done an amazing job with also bridging those kinds of gaps and getting the data, shall we say, to the right people. And in this case, Bill McKibben took the information to the Central Committee of the World Council of Churches, the WCC, a fellowship over 300 churches, which represents some 590 million people in 150 countries, endorsed fossil fuel divestment this week, agreeing to phase out its own holdings and encourage its members to do the same. The WCC Central Committee is made up of dozens of influential religious leaders from around the world, meaning the decision could resonate far and wide. Further, Bill McKean's quoted saying, "The World Council of Churches reminds us that morality demands thinking as much about the future as about ourselves, and that there's no threat to the future greater than the unchecked burning of fossil fuels." It's a remarkable moment for the founder, Bill McKean, the founder of 350.org, a global climate campaign that is supporting the divestment effort, continues to say, "This is a remarkable moment for the 590 million Christians. It is, in its member denominations, a huge percentage of humanity says today, this far and no further." That is kind of impressive, that now you're talking about another whole large branch of of faith that has worldwide implications. I find that to be fascinating, that spirituality has now finally caught up to the stewardship it has always touted as part of its faith, and it is now suggesting that it is looking to put its money where its mouth is. That really couldn't come at a better time. In conclusion, we all need to recognize that business as usual is not sustainable. However, we have the technology to change things, but we must act soon and with great precision of intent. Thank you.